All right, I think we'll get underway. We've given everybody a couple of minutes just to get on. It looks like we've got a pretty full complement of folks. So thanks everybody for joining us today for our Mastering Patching webinar using Bacon. Bacon is a endpoint management solution that does lots of cool things. We're going to get into that in a minute. On today's agenda, we'll just introduce myself and Dave in a moment. But before we do, we'll also just mention the rest of these items. We'll do a high-level overview. We will go through sort of what real-world customers are experiencing and show off the software. We'll talk about new features, and then we'll conclude. So we'll keep it fairly concise today, make sure that we're making good use of your time, and just probably do a little house cleaning here first. If you want to advance the slides, Dave, we'll do intros and house cleaning. My name is John Marcato. I'm co-founder and CTO of Bacon, and my main role today is to facilitate this call and to give a general sense for what it is that we do and why. And joining me is Dave Adekoya, one of our senior engineers and the best demo guy I know. Thanks for joining us today, Dave.
Thanks for having me.
All right, audio check is good. We've got Dave. That's good news. With that, why don't we do a little house cleaning, just make sure everybody knows kind of what we're working with today. We do have a questions system if you haven't used this kind of webinar format, so that little GoToWebinar thing that popped up there, you'll see a question section. Please do ask us questions, anything you want to know. We've got people answering that here in the background. And I want to make sure you get the detailed answers you're looking for. Also, at the end of the webinar, we'll have a survey with some questions, and we'll get information from you so that we can send you one of our absolutely best in the world Bacon BFF t-shirts. I do love these. I really do wear them all the time, and I think you will be very happy to get one. The other thing that I should mention here is we will just do a couple of quick polls in a couple of minutes. That will just help us make sure that we're gearing towards what you guys want to know exactly. So that helps Dave steering a little bit. And the other thing is, if you don't get all the information you're looking for today, you can find our YouTube page under just search for Bacon Unlimited, and you'll see all of our Bacon Bits videos up there. There's some 120 or something, 115. Up there, and we do update those weekly, so there's always new stuff up there. Pretty exciting. So with that, Dave, I think we can kind of go and get started here. And I think the first thing we're going to want to do is have Lane launch a couple of polls. So Lane, why don't we start with the first poll, please? All right, which features are you most interested in seeing? So we're definitely going to be talking about patching. That's a big focus, but we wanted to see if people are interested in how much they want to cover in some of these other areas. So please put in what you're most interested in, and that will help us tremendously. And we'll just leave that up here for a sec to give everybody a chance to answer. Looks like most people are in the right place with 77% and climbing focused on patching. Although someone, I think, just to be interesting, just made it go up to 13% for monitoring. So make sure we cover some monitoring in there too, Dave. And we'll launch a second poll. We'll launch a second poll here as well. Why don't you throw that up there, Lane? All right, what operating systems do you support? So, some people are in all Windows environments, but a lot of people are in mixed, and it's always nice for us to know what your spread is. We recently, about a year ago, started covering iOS devices in addition to macOS. That's because we expanded out our ability to communicate with the what's known as the MDM API on both those operating systems. So we decided to do iOS as well. But we cover Linux and Windows and Mac historically, and then just for this last year, iOS. And it looks like 100% of people want to see Windows, but about 25 to 30% on all the other operating systems. So Dave, let's make sure if we can just to throw a little flair in there for those as well. And with that, why don't we, kind of jump into it, and I'll give a little preview of what bacon is and why people should use bacon. And then I'll hand it over to you to show the actual system itself, and we'll just kind of keep this thing rolling along.
Yeah, sounds good.
Fantastic. All right. What is bacon? Well, it's not the delicious snack that you eat with breakfast, although it has the same experience. Bacon, everything is better bacon as with everything is better with bacon, as we like to say. And essentially, what bacon is a cross-platform endpoint management system. It's very modern. It was built from the ground up to consider the modern security landscape. It's got a very intuitive interface. And the key that we were kind of thinking of is how do we join something that deals with all of the types of security concerns people have? So that's the platform itself, how it's built, but also how it helps you in your environment with security. So that was one thing. The other thing was, how do we make it so that you can figure out how to use it on day one without having to like read the entire manual or even maybe even touch the manual at all. And that was kind of the big idea. So hopefully you'll see as Dave takes you through it, it's really very, very intuitive. You know, all the pages look the same. They're laid out in a way where you kind of always know where you are, and it seems kind of obvious of what you would do next. So that's kind of the goal. There are some more sophisticated capabilities of bacon if you choose to use them, just because computers can get very complex and sometimes you want to do really interesting things. You want to be able to script. Well, we make deploying those scripts really easy, but scripts aren't always the simplest thing in the world. So we're going to talk about how we make it easy to deploy those, and we do provide a lot of templates as well. And we also have a system called Profiles, which goes beyond scripts and really into more of an automation engine that uses some more sophisticated YAML documents to manage it. But other than those two features, all the stuff that we do, patching, rolling out software, getting inventory on things, doing reboots, making sure that antivirus is running, making sure that all the health on the system is good, you know, CPU's not spiking, not running out of disk space. We monitor for all of that. So the last thing I'll say about kind of what bacon is that bacon is a real-time engine. And so where it's going to be very, very different from a lot of our competition is that it was built in a way where the communication between the agents, which is the software that runs on all of your endpoints, other than iOS, where we only communicate through its MDM language, you're going to see a much different experience than something, not to pick on them, but on Microsoft's Intune, let's say. It's a simple MDM, but when you do things in it, it can be hours to even a couple of days before very basic tasks occur. And there's no way to know how long it's going to take or control that. And that doesn't mean it isn't a good tool. It's just don't use it if your intention is to get real-time information or real-time actions, right? But a lot of times when you're working in IT, it's really, really important to be able to do things and know exactly when they're going to happen. So that's where bacon is a huge differentiator from those kinds of platforms. All right, so let's just move forward one more slide, Dave, and talk a little bit about why. I think some of the things I just said kind of really indicate that. So I may have sort of blended that in with the first slide, and I think that's okay. I think really the main thing is that you've got this ability to have people in all levels of the IT department. So the first day tier 1 help desk person, or even somebody who's like a tier 3 sysadmin or a system architect, they can all get use out of bacon. And there is a role-based access control system that's quite robust. So you can make sure that the right people can do the right things and against the right systems. So just to give an example there, you could have, tier 1 Windows help desk people able to see all the Windows machines and do things like patching, but not be able to do advanced scripting, which might be outside of their skill set anyway. And then let's say you have a bunch of Mac computers too. You can have it so they can't even see those. They don't even know that they exist. Or you could say for that group of computers, those same people have the rights to see all the Macs, but they just can't make any alterations or do any patching or any other tasks or any remote control or anything like that. So Bacon is really flexible in that way. It works great. I've seen it with people where they've got one or two IT people, and I've seen it in companies where they've got 50 or 60 IT people that all use the platform at the same time. So if you fit into any span of those sizes, it can work really well for you. Um, the other sort of big reasons I think is that this area of software, endpoint management, sometimes you hear RMM or MDM or UEM, it's all kind of going towards the same place, right? We're taking the operating systems that are somewhat flexible, right? So endpoint operating systems, things like servers, workstations, laptops, and even some mobile devices. And what we're saying is we understand that these are great and important and flexible devices, but because they're flexible, they can be really the softest place for security attacks. And they can also be the place where we can lose the most productivity if things aren't handled well. And so Bacon is specifically designed to deal with those issues in a very modern world, like the one that we're dealing with now post-pandemic, where most people don't even go to offices, or a lot of people don't. You could have a company where 90% is on site, but that 10% that isn't, it's a little harder to manage things, to control what policies are on machines, and just to know what state all the computers are in. Bacon is going to help you solve that problem. It's designed to do that exact thing. One of the reasons that it's able to do that is that Bacon uses a very, very thin communication protocol, very many factors less than a VPN, but with the same kind of security between the agent and the server. So you can communicate every 15 seconds with a machine, or even in real time when you're doing remote connections, and it's going to use virtually no bandwidth. I mean, it's not none, but to give you some sense, just to put my money where my mouth is, so to say, 1,000 agents communicating in real time uses less than 2 megabits of traffic. So it's a really, really light protocol, which allows more things to happen more often and give a more real-time experience. I love that because when I'm trying to do something really cool, like work on one test machine to figure out if I can iterate doing all of these settings changes, right? I get a lot more iterations done in a lot less time because I'm not waiting for like an hour to find out if a job went through, if it did what I wanted. I can actually just have it turn around very, very quickly. So those are some of the main reasons why. There are more. Definitely check out our YouTube channel, or talk to us on Discord, or there's also a bunch of testimonials up on our website, baconunlimited.com. Those are real. I promise. We did interviews with those people. We had them copywritten, and then we sent them back to them for approval to make sure that they felt 100% good. Here's a sample of some of our clients across many different industries. This list has grown tremendously, but there are a lot on here. If you recognize any of them as being in your industry, just know that we can take really good care of you. So the media industry, we've got banking, we've got people in all kinds of manufacturing, we've got government, we've got just you name it. It's really gotten pretty extensive. So that's kind of all of my part in a nutshell. I think I've blathered on enough, and I want to give a lot of time for Dave to show you the real interface and some of the things. And if there's anything you don't see, I do see someone asked about Android devices, so I'll answer it live here. We will do Android devices in the future, but we didn't build it yet. So I just want to be real upfront. It's not something that's going to come out in the next 3 to 6 months. We are talking about it as a 2024 type thing. So if that's something you need, I would continue to use something else. Maybe you're Intune or another platform for that. But most businesses aren't managing aren't managing Android. I know that's surprising, but I promise the statistics are there. And so we decided to kind of do it last because we're really focused on getting the Apple stuff right on the MDM side. But just so you know. With that, Dave, if you are ready to jump in, I say we actually show these people the real deal. And if anyone wants to get a follow-up demo, we love doing them. So if we can't get everything answered today, that's no problem. And the floor is yours, sir.
Alrighty. All right, let's switch over to our demo Bacon here. So What we're looking at here is our overview page. This is where you land whenever you first log into Bacon. We have a couple different widgets up here we'd like to point out before we get started. So first off, we have alerts. This is going to show you what alerts have triggered in the system, and these are based on rules that you can configure. So things like, is a machine online or offline? Is a service running? Has a machine exceeded my maximum tolerance for how old a patch can be before I get alerted? That kind of stuff will show up here. These ones in purple, these are profiles. So we'll cover this a little bit later on, but Bacon is able to audit the different configurations it's pushing out. So if you think of GPOs, when you first create one and send it out, there's not a lot of feedback on if it actually was um, like broken, did it actually work on my machines, which ones did it actually go to. Bacon is able to collect all that information on what configurations we've sent out from Bacon, and also as an additional feature, you can make monitors based on those too. So if I have to reapply this security configuration or a very key configuration, I can get an email about it and understand what's going on in my environment. Next up here, we have endpoints. So which of your endpoints are online versus offline? You've seen this interface before. We've added a new one for warning, which means that we can see this endpoint. It's online, but some of the data is stale. So again, just trying to give you as much of visibility as possible into the system and like the interworkings when necessary as well. Next, we have distribution. So this shows you what operating systems you have the Bacon agent installed on. So in our lab, we have 12 Windows, we've got 4 Mac, and then a varied amount of different Linux systems. Then we have patches, and this will show you what patches are available to deploy in your environment. So here I have 65 Windows patches, 528 Ubuntu packages, a tiny sliver of like a couple Mac patches, 4 there. And next up, we have antivirus protection. So this is going to show you which of your devices are running antivirus. And in this case, we're allowing you to select your own service. So as we'll see a little bit later on, rather than having to pick from a predefined list of AV that we recognize, we allow you to actually go in and select any number of services, no matter what they are, to contribute to this number. So that's going to be very good for any kind of like split scenarios. Let's say you run Cortex XDR, but you acquire a new company and they're still running through their CrowdStrike license. So you can support all those and just kind of roll them into the already robust monitoring here by just selecting the service. And then lastly, we have encrypted hard drives. So in our lab, we don't have any, but this is going to support BitLocker on Windows and then FileVault on macOS. And so that'll help you keep track of which devices are being properly secured if that's a requirement that you have. So next up, I'm just going to walk down this nav bar on the left-hand side. So we'll move over to monitoring. So here we can see different rules that were created in Bacon. And so a lot of these profile ones are going to be automatic, but let's take a look at what a monitor would look like if we're making a rule. So here we'll define a name, then we have a type. So we have memory threshold, CPU, disk. Those can be pretty useful for performance indicators. Then we have things like patch age and patch count. So how old is the oldest patch would be patch age, and patch count are how many patches are available. So maybe your tolerance isn't necessarily a time frame, but just how many patches are outstanding. So we can support both of those for you. Then, if one of these rules is detected, it'll trigger an alert over here. Now, currently we have support for Autotask and Jira as far as ticketing systems. Direct API access allows us to create and close tickets automatically based on the alert condition. Otherwise, we also support emailing out of the system, so that way you can email your IT group or email your ticketing system with that same kind of data. Then lastly, for monitoring, we have the knock dashboard, or excuse me, knock dashboard. There we go. This allows you to see the visual indicator of the health of your endpoints. And so we've got different markers, healthy, warning, critical. Usually criticals can be triggered by either critical alerts being on there or an excessive amount of patches. We have like a little display here of what contributes to each of these different metrics. And the screen allows you to just automatically scroll through your environment and adjust like column size depending on your display. And then if this isn't on a static display and you're on a PC like I am, you're also able to click on any of these endpoints to go straight to their endpoint detail page. And we'll spend some time going through this, but before we do that, let's look at the endpoints table. So here we see our endpoints table, and this is going to give you a lot of different data points. So if I look at my columns here, the columns available, we can see things like we have IP address, where if you've got multiple IP addresses like this guy, it'll put a comma in there. We can see things like serial number, that can be very helpful, OS version, stuff like that. And so with this table, we're able to search through all of these different data points by using this quick search here. So if I type in bacon underscore admin, it'll pull up 2 devices that last had bacon admin logged in. Or I can just type in Windows, it'll find all of my Windows devices. Now, under the hood, it's actually searching through each of these columns individually. So we can type in anything like IP addresses here, oops, 192.168, and it's going to find different devices in this table. In addition to that, we also have filters. These filters allow for multiple searches. So let's say if I wanted to find all of my, let's say macOS endpoints, I could do that. In this case, I may want to add Windows to that as well. And we're only going to filter for the ones that are currently online. Right, so now I have my filters all set up, which is going to be a little bit more targeted than the quick search. And through this, I'm able to also create a dynamic group. So in Bacon, there's two ways to organize your endpoints. We have static groups. Those are going to be groups where you select the endpoint to the checkbox, and only the endpoints you've added are in that group. Pretty simple. It'll change if an admin goes to update it, but otherwise it remains static. In the case of dynamic groups, we're using these filters here. And so you can create a dynamic group to look at all the machines and filter based on whatever criteria you selected here. And so in this case, I can make a just online devices group, and it's going to look for everybody who's got Mac or Windows who is currently connected. So right now it's 5 items. Maybe later on today it'll be 7 or 8. The group will automatically update as those machines meet whatever kind of filter criteria you've selected here. So now we've kind of gone over like endpoints from a group view. Let's look at an individual one. So for this, I'll select my Windows 10 demo here. And so on here, we're going to see a little bit of a similar information between this and the endpoints table, with the exception of this is going to have some more detailed information for us. So we have 8 different tiles up here, and as we click these tiles, it'll change the bottom information. So over on system, we can see things like serial number, CPU model, utilized versus RAM capacity. That can be pretty useful. Here's some performance indicators here that'll update for us. And then we have tags. These can also be filtered on that previous table, as well as you can add these by just clicking in here or typing in a new tag. And then notes. And so keep in mind that these tags and notes are going to be product-wide, so the tags and notes that I see are the tags and notes that you'll see as well. Next up, we have disk. This shows you what disks we have. This is Windows, so we have them as drive letters. If we had any BitLocker configuration on here, we'd see that over in recovery keys here and be able to pull back that recovery key. Except we have network information. So what kind of network adapters do I have attached to this machine? So we only have one, it's currently active, and we can see things like IPv4 and v6 address, along with a MAC address too. Except we have policies. So this is how we track our profiles. Again, you can kind of think of them like similar to GPOs, although they're pretty powerful. Then we also have groups. So what groups is this device a member of? Most of these are going to be dynamic. We tend to use a lot of those just to organize our endpoints, but there are some static ones in here as well. And lastly, MDM would be for just MDM devices like maybe a Mac that's MDM joined or an iPhone or something similar. So for Windows, we won't see anything here. Next up, we have software. So what software we have installed on this machine. You can see the software and the number of endpoints that have that same software and version. Over in services, we can see which services are running or stopped in this machine, and we have an option of starting and stopping them or marking as antivirus. Like I mentioned earlier, you're able to mark any service as AV. So here I have Windows Defender, which is AV, and then Windows Search, which certainly is not. But all the same, we allow it to be flexible, so you can always mark whatever you need in your environment to keep that metric up to date. Then lastly, we have logs. So this will show you the different logs, or excuse me, the different jobs this machine was a part of. Either if the machine or the system did it automatically, let's say profiles are deploying on a schedule, or if I push software to it or a package to it manually, you'd see those too. We do have patching in here, but I'm going to cover this as we go over patching over in this menu. Just keep in mind that the patching UI, the patching flow we go through here is going to be exactly the same as the patching that we do for all the other endpoints. So same process to patch one endpoint as it is to patch 1,000 endpoints. Before we get too far away, I also do want to cover the Bacon remote control. So this is a separate process that you can install. This allows you to have a screen remote. So if I go through here, you can see someone's doing some PowerShell stuff. And we're able to interact with the desktop. We've got different things like options to change quality settings in case it's a low bandwidth location, a user chat to chat back and forth with the user independent of any other application, stuff like that. Then we also have a shell. This tends to be my favorite. If you ever have a demo with me, I'm going to talk about this for maybe 5 minutes or more if you let me. This allows you to access like the command prompt in the back end of the system, or even something like PowerShell. We're able to go through here. Let's say we can set a variable. then report back on that variable, copy and paste, you name it. So this is going to behave like an actual shell on the machine. That includes semi-GUI stuff. So if you're on Linux and you're familiar with like top or htop, it's semi-interactive. It refreshes the display pretty often. You'll be able to use that in here, as well as like loading bars. Let's say if you're running like a DISM or an SFC scan, that'll also work in here as well. Then lastly, to round off the remotes, let's go over to file system. Here we can see the backend file system of this endpoint. So here, I think this is mounted ISO versus we have the standard C. And we can just thumb through here and look at different files on the machine. You can download them pretty easily with a left click. Let's see, I downloaded this, I think 11 times. Yep, 11 times I do my demos. Or you can also upload with this button here to either pull or push files to that user's machine. All right, so let's move on. We're going too far. Here's our group UI. So it shows you, like I was talking about before, we have both dynamic groups as well as static groups. Under software, this UI will look pretty familiar. As John says, we tend to use the same kind of UI where possible. This is going to show software for all machines instead of just a single machine. Usually we filter this by platforms to make it easier to parse, but you can see here we've got various operating systems available. And then same thing for services, various operating systems here too. All right, so now let's get on to like the good part, patching. So how do we patch in Bacon? There's two different approaches you can use. One of them is kind of endpoint first, and the other is patch first. So the first option you can do is to go over to your endpoints table. And let's say you're looking for a certain group of endpoints. So let's say I want to do equal to Windows, and I want to filter for my East Coast factory network group. I'm going to use the device I want to patch today. So I can take this group of endpoints, select them all, go to Actions, and Patch. This will do is it'll pull up all the patches available to those endpoints, as we can see here, that I can select from. A lot of language packs, think of a Windows 7 endpoint in there with a ton of patches. Then once I've selected patches, always keep a note of if it requires a reboot, that can usually change the interaction and how and when you want to patch. Then we're able to go over to our endpoint side. Now, because we've already selected the endpoints, these ones won't be selectable. There's another method that kind of flips the script, but we'll show you that in a moment. So in this case, we're going to plan to deploy to all of these endpoints. Let me get down to our agent scheduling. So we have a couple different options for you, excuse me. We have install immediately. What that's going to do is push out the patch right away. And so everybody who's green or yellow here, they're going to get the patch right away. These three red ones that are offline are actually going to fail, and the system's not going to retry. So this is good for just, I want to do this thing one time. If you're not online, you're not online. That is what it is. That's usually not the behavior for patching. What I recommend instead is using run when connected. This allows you to push the patch out to everybody who's currently online. And then for these three that are offline, it's going to queue it in the system until they come online again. This way, I want to make sure everyone gets these patches installed as soon as possible, and this will fit that requirement. Next up, we have schedule time. This is pretty simple. This allows you to pick a time and a date. Let's say if we want to do like Friday, let's do so like 1800. You'd like to type in here like that. And then this will push us out on Friday at 1800 and get everybody patched up that way. And then for the last one, we have relentless mode. John, if you wouldn't mind kind of taking over to explain this one. I know you had some personal skin in the game there.
Yeah, I should say probably I was just made to feel a little bit like, that feeling when you're like, I should have thought of that, right? Well,
I keep
this
bringing
was
it
a
up.
feature. Yeah, this was a feature back in the day that a customer, actually a prospect at the time, now currently a customer, they brought up a really good point in a meeting, and it seemed so obvious after they said it. They said, we get these approved times to do patching and reboots, particularly of our um, uh, uh, like servers, right? We get like all these production servers. We're not supposed to reboot them. We get maybe like 4 hours on a weekend to do that. And we really need to make sure that if we're going to do patching and rebooting, that stops at a particular time. So starting at a particular time is good, but we also need to stop at a particular time. And I was like, that makes total sense. And as we kind of talked through it, the other thing that came up is I don't want to sit there and restart the job every time the machine reboots, because sometimes you got a lot of patches and there's multiple reboots that are required. And I was like, that is such a good point. And this was very early on in the product, some 4 years ago or something like that. And basically what we realized was we needed something with this schedule that you're showing obviously on the screen there. And then we needed it to be very, very thorough during that time, as long as we leave the default settings on there. And so, the beginning and end schedule is great. And the way it works in here is if you schedule this time and you've got, say, 50 patches and it's going to require 5 reboots to get through them all, the Bacon system is very intelligent. It knows all the metadata about all the systems, the patches. We talk directly to the COM API, so we know specifically what's going on in the machine, that it needs certain updates, that the particular ones are available, and we can run the control part of that, right? So we can get those downloaded and installed. We can make sure they're rebooted at the right time after the right clump of updates. And then when the machine comes back up, since we are agent based and we're controlling the server end, right, the Bacon server and the agent, we can actually make sure that that job picks right up where it left off. So the machine comes up clean, it's working, and a few seconds later, the next round of patches gets installed, right? And then the next reboot, and then the next patches, and the next reboot. And the key point there, and I think what's most important, is that if you do run out of time in the middle, let's say you added those 50 updates, you get through 35 and 4 of the 5 reboots, but you run out of time, it just stops. There is no more additions of patches and reboots. You'll see all of that. Our logs are very detailed. We pull them directly off of every machine. They are human readable. So you will know exactly what patches you got. You will know how many reboots were done, and you will see the net result of that. And that is to say, let's say you got through all the patches and all the reboots. You'll see your machines as showing no more available updates. You'll see that they don't require any more reboots, and you'll feel really, really good about it. Now, in the case that you don't get through them all, you'll see, there's still 15 more patches to go, right? And now I've got to think about next weekend or next month's schedule. So that's essentially relentless mode in a nutshell. It's not a new feature, but it's a really important one if you're doing a lot of catching up on patches, or if you have a lot of servers and you'd like to get your weekends back. This can sit there and get all of those tasks done on Saturday while you're doing something cool like, I don't know, whitewater rafting or skiing or jumping out of airplanes or something like that. So yeah, don't sit around and patch all weekend. Let it do it for you. And even if something goes wrong, the monitoring part of Bacon can alert you if there's a problem with services not starting or critical servers not coming up or something like that. So there you go. That's it.
Awesome. Thanks, Ron.
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah, like you said, it's not a new feature, but it's definitely a pretty crucial one to highlight just because it gives you so much flexibility. So if you're familiar with Bacon on the left-hand side, it's going to look a little bit different. So we covered what patches look like from the endpoint side. Now from the patch side, if I click on available here, this is the other direction. So this shows you the patches available for your machines. So if I was to go, say, we'll pull up macOS for our platform. This will show you the macOS patches we have. And so instead of going device first or endpoint first, we're going from the patching side saying I want to push out these patches to whoever needs them. So in this case, we can select who's available, or sorry, we can select these available patches, I should say. Then go to actions and install. And just like I said before, a lot of the UI is going to be the same kind of flow. The difference here is that instead of selecting patches, because I've already done that, oops, I should go back to here. We're now just selecting from the available endpoints. So unfortunately, all these Mac ones are offline in our lab, but same exact interaction. One thing to note too is that you actually can patch multiple operating systems at the same time. You can have, 3 Mac patches, 3 Linux patches, and 15 Windows patches, and do that all in one job. Most clients do split it up, but I have seen some just kind of select all and patch, and that works fine too. And so just like before, we have our endpoints to select, then our scheduling times, just as we saw before. Now, we've added some more things to patching as of Bacon 4.2. So we now have history and compliance. Compliance view is going to give you a visual indicator of the patch, say, progress of your environment. So here, if you look at compliance score, I can see I have 100% of patches available have been installed on this Big Sur endpoint. As we go down here, I think it's kind of important to both look at the compliance score, right? Percentage is pretty useful, but also the amount not installed. If we see this Bacon one here, there's one at 75%, it's missing 2 patches, but this guy at 81% is missing 39, right? It's a pretty crucial difference. we try to give you as much information as possible to help you sift through this data. Then next up, we have patch history, and this is going to give you a view of the patch history of the devices individually. John, if you wouldn't mind, can you take over for this one too?
Yeah, no problem. So I actually like this report more just because you can really cut and splice it every which way you want. And like everything in Bacon, then you can export it, right? So anything can be exported out into an Excel instantaneously, which is really handy if you've got to send out a report or maybe use some Excel tools to cut it up or merge things, or if you're a pivot table wizard, it can be really handy. So
Hmm.
essentially, what you're seeing with patch history is every single patch on every single device, a history of that. Now, you can search as Dave just did, right? He found something related to a particular KB article, but you can do any of our search criteria and you can use our compounding filters just like you can on every single table throughout Bacon. And this way you could get certain machines, or you could find out all the patches that took a really long time, more than, let's say, 30 days to get installed. And this is a great way, I think, for IT departments, oftentimes answering to management. They say something like, oh, it feels like we're never getting patches done, or we're doing patches too often. And what you can show is actually we do this in a very regimented way. We take this one test group, right? We test patches on it. So after Patch Tuesday, we give them 7 days or 5 days to chill. And then we decide we want to install them and make sure they work good on our test group. And so you can see our test group here is really clean and follows that cycle over many months. But then the rest of our machines, let's say all of our Windows 10 user computers or something, we wait 30 days to do those. And then we install the ones, all the patches, as long as they've passed the other previous tests. And so what they'll then see is 30 to 35 days on average is when patches are getting installed. And you can also show that none are outstanding or only ones are outstanding that you didn't want. There's just a lot of things there that you can do the information management on it. Now, I will say that I'm always much more sensitive about making sure that the patching is easy and it works. And that's the best thing that Bacon does, is easy patching that always works, right? Unless your machines are broken or something like that, but generally it always works. But what we've come to learn over time is people are really, it's really important for them to be able to get good data and analytics and be able to answer sometimes to higher ups, and be able to use real facts to say, no, this is how we did it. Here's the proof in the pudding. And that's what kind of patch history is all about. So we're really glad we added this. It's a very recent addition, and I use it all the time. So hopefully you will too.
Awesome, appreciate that.
Yeah, you bet.
And with that, one thing I want to cover too is just kind of how patching works in Bacon. We're showing you how to patch in Bacon, but under the hood, what's going on. So one thing that's kind of key to note here is that Bacon doesn't have to download every single patch available for all of your machines, right? We saw we have like maybe like 1,000 patches. We have at least a couple hundred patches available here for every machine in our environment. Yeah, almost 1,000. What it's going to do instead is it's going to query each device and figure out what patches it has available, and then that's how we build this table here. So when it comes to patch day, then Bacon can instruct the devices to install that patch, and then they'll pull whichever method is native to them and their configuration. So if you're using any kind of third-party repositories, I've seen like some Linux admins will do that where they have their own on-site repository. That's perfectly fine as long as the OS is pre-configured for that. It's just going to receive an instruction from Bacon saying, hey, patch using whatever method is native to you. When it comes to the Windows side, it's very similar. So let's say you're running WSUS for a low bandwidth environment, or you just want like more control over your patching environment. But that's not going to be super helpful for people off-site, right? Well, in the case of Bacon, again, remember, we're telling the system when to patch and what to patch, but not necessarily like where to get it from. So for those devices that report to WSUS, they'll pull the patches from there. That's perfectly fine. For someone who works remotely like I do, well, I'll just pull it from my standard internet connection because that's how my computer's been configured to do so. And so all that can happen in the background without you having to worry about that every time you go to patch in Bacon. So that's kind of a simple way to patch, but there's also more advanced methods. Every environment's different. Sometimes it's just better to make your own solution. And so I wanted to kind of show you a more advanced example of ways to configure patching and kind of patch your endpoints. So going through there, let's take a look at our file repository. Actually, we'll start with the profiles and states. So let's go over to states. So states, like I said before, are kind of like GPOs, but they're really just a way to set configurations. So I want to set this registry key to equal this value. I want to put this file in the machine. I want to install this thing. I want to configure this LGPO, stuff like that. So in here, we made an example a while back on, oops, not that one, it's to LGPO, on how to set up Windows Update for just automatic patching, right? Some environments do want that. If it's a lab, it's pretty much a good idea, that kind of thing. So here we can use our states to configure LGPOs. This is actually pulled from our GitHub repository, and we can kind of walk you through like individual training on how to build these. There's references online, stuff like that. What we're really looking at here is configuring automatic updates to auto download and schedule and install. It's going to kick off every Saturday at noon on the 4th week of the month. Right, so this is a very simple configuration. If you were to send this out over GPO, that's fantastic, but you're not able to actually audit if machines got that configuration. With Bacon, when you send out any kind of profile, it's going to be able to check and make sure all the machines receive that instruction. So these states are just individual configurations, and then they're combined into a profile and then pushed out on a certain time frame. So if I look at my one here, just as an example for Ubuntu Firewall, it has one state selected, and its time frame is 1 hour. So every hour, Bacon's going to check all the machines this has been pushed to and make sure that they have this state in place. If I bounce over to my logs here, just as an example, let's filter this for jobs that were successful, like so, and take a look at what just a standard deployment looks like for a profile deploy. So here, I think this profile is made to set wallpaper and set an LGPO to do so. So here we can see on our demo Win10 machine, it already has the file that we need for the wallpaper. That was our first instruction, was put this on the machine. Then the second instruction was to set the LGPO. So here we can see all specified policies are properly configured. That's kind of what we're looking at here. So we can use a combination of this system along with our file repository. This allows us to push out scripts and installers and stuff like that. And so again, this is stuff probably for like a demo or a different kind of demonstration. But as an example, I wrote a script here to push out Windows updates based on how old they are, right? As a client request, we figure we can kind of take a stab at it here. And so this is how we can do a more advanced side of things. So we're going to define some update categories, push them out by, what kind of time frame we're looking for, maybe everything that's 15 days old. I can't remember what I configured this one for, 21 days it looks like, and then only critical updates, security updates on a Thursday. So this is super custom, but we're still able to use the simple methods to package this up, push it to the machines that need it, and then report back on that patching. So let's see if any luck here, may have an example. There we go. I think this one here is an example of that going on. So I pushed out the patch, then it's going to look through all the Windows updates, count how old they are, 520 days, 9 days, and kind of go through here. Then it's going to install the Windows updates that meet that criteria, in this case 2. And then it'll list out the ones that didn't meet the criteria, just so you know what it didn't do, right? So this is going to be 21 days or older, and everybody who's too new will be installed, I guess, next time we run that patch, or next time this profile applies. So that's kind of the advanced side of things. I think you can see how easy it is to think outside the box and meet some very specific requirements if your environment needs it. And we try to support that kind of creative method where possible. So that's kind of the basics around like patching in Bacon. John, I'm not sure if there's anything else you wanted to add or if you wanted to move on to the new features or the upcoming features, I should say.
Well, I think we should do new features because I want to make sure we leave time for folks to fill out the survey and have a few
Mhm.
extra minutes. So let's whip through new features. Let's do it kind of quickly and kind of see if we can wrap here in the next 5 or so.
Can do. All right, let's switch over to our dev server. Disclaimer, it is our dev server, just in case anything weird happens, but we should be good. All right,
All
all set.
right. Yeah, so great. Thanks for getting that up there. We've been talking for a little bit about a feature that a lot of people want, which is what we call proactive third-party patching. What we've seen in the past is there are tools out there, a lot of them standalone, that do some semblance of third-party patching. Sometimes they make you repackage things, or they get the packages from weird places, or you can only use the ones they list. So third-party patching means all the software that wasn't made by your operating systems manufacturer. So, not just the Mac OS or Windows or Linux, but these other kinds of applications like I don't know, 7-Zip or Chrome or Adobe Reader, right? All of these applications can be problematic if they're not patched. That's both productivity wise and security wise. The real issue is that, OS patching, you saw how we did it in here. I promise you will find it's so easy to keep all your systems up to date with Bacon. That's something that we see people doing all the time. I do it myself. Even as CTO, I take on all the patching just to kind of use it all the time and be really familiar with it. I spend about 20 minutes a month on it. It's that easy. But we wanted to do something where we could get that same level of ease with third-party software. And even though we can already patch third-party software today, what we didn't have was a really automated system to check the true repositories from the manufacturers themselves. So when we're looking at Google Chrome, we're actually looking at the one from Google that is the proper one. And we have a couple of cool things that you can do with this. So for each of these apps that Dave's kind of showing here on the screen, you can decide whether or not you want to monitor it at all. And that's going to do things for you like let you know any machine who happens to have one of Dave's favorites apps is there, everything. And it is a really good app. I'm glad you recommended it to me. It's free, and if you want to find things on your computer with like no indexing time, I have no idea how they're so great, but they have that. And if you want to make sure that stays up to date, though, you can monitor that, right? And that's one thing that you can set in here in our third-party patching feature. But the other thing that you can do is set it as a managed package. And what that means is instead of just knowing that it's out of date and knowing you've got to go do something about it on some of your machines, you'll actually be able to automatically download it, right? That's the managed part. And then there's a third step, which is deciding which machines will use that managed package or that successively automatically updated managed package to get automatically updated themselves. So you're deciding every step of the way how you want it to be. But if you wanted to have, all your browsers and this everything software and 7-Zip and, anything else you can think of, it's just sort of automatically staying up to date. It will do all of that for you, and you'll know what's going on the whole time without having to lift a finger. And that's the idea. Now, don't get me wrong, sometimes it's better not to, go in there and automatically update the software. But even if you just put it in managed mode, you'll know you always have the latest one here on Bacon ready to be deployed with great simplicity. So that part I really love about this. We're going to have this out in about a month and a half, and we're really excited about it. You can see it's already pretty built now. You'll also be able to put in your own custom apps, which is really exciting. So it's not just the software we choose. A lot of them will be there out of the box, but you can add your own, and we can monitor those as well. So really, really cool stuff there. The other feature, Dave, I did want to talk about in here is we've already for a long time allowed you to use Active Directory and local accounts to have people log into Bacon. But people have asked us to be able to do SSO for either Okta or Azure AD. And we've now added those as well coming out in version 4.5. So end of the summer here. And it's really, really easy to set up. And you can, any other SSO apps you have, it'll be very similar to managing them the exact same way. So a lot of people asked for that. We got around to building that in. It already works today. We're just going through final testing to get it out here, but really excited about that. And then the last one, there's nothing really visual to show on this. It's sort of currently headless. It's not shown in the UI, is our ability to do AI chatbot or a chat assistant. We call it Chat BLT. And Chat BLT uses the GPT system just like Chat GPT does, but it's integrated and trained specifically inside of Bacon. The two things that it does in our first preview version that you'll see in version 4.5 of Bacon is the ability to ask it anything about how to do something in Bacon. So think of it as a live admin guide that you can chat with. It'll tell you how to do everything. But the second thing it'll do I mentioned early in the call that building scripts can be a challenging thing in the IT field. And also our profiles, which allow you to control every aspect of every machine and know what's going on when you're controlling it. That's all such a cool thing to be able to do, but it does take a little sophistication. With ChatBLT, it'll actually build you any kind of script or build you any kind of profile so you can use that in the software. In the future, it will be like in the coming months, it will even be more integrated. It will be able to do more things for you. My goal is that you could not even get out of bed and just talk to, the system, and it will just do things for you and tell you what's going on. But we're not quite to dealing with that level of laziness yet, but we want to. So just
One day.
know we're all in on being able to do all this with AI. We're doing a lot in our back end with AI things, and so very excited to be coming out with these features. So I think that's it in a nutshell. Did I get it all, Dave?
I think you got it all, yeah.
All right. Well, there's 7 minutes left. If you wouldn't mind filling out the survey, we would be grateful. We would love to do further demos for you to answer your questions. And if you happen to have anything else that you need, just let us know. I'll be reaching out and make sure you guys get those t-shirts. Thank you all for joining today. We greatly appreciate it. And the survey will be coming here in just 1 second. Thank you very much.